welcome back, listeners and viewers. We're here with another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. My guest today helps businesses navigate change and growth without leaving people behind by simplifying what seems complex. It is all about the people. People? Okay, let's get after it and tell the story and the journey of my friend, Summer Miller. Summer, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. I am so pumped to have you on because your journey, one, I love having people from outside of Minnesota that were born and raised outside of the state and not Iowa. And so we'll dig into some of that. So that's good. I also want to talk about the difference between Oregon and you say it. Say the two that
Are
piss
you
you
talking
off.
about Oregon or Oregon?
Thank you. Thank you. Why could I couldn't get it out. Oregon and Oregon. There you go.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and then we're going to tell your journey. But more than anything else, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm pumped to get after it, and let's do this thing. All right.
Sounds good.
So, what is the deal? Why? So, when I was growing up, all I knew was Oregon Trail. Okay, the game. So that was
Right.
like, and that's how they said it. That's how they promoted it. It was Oregon Trail.
I think somebody designed that game that was not from Oregon.
All right, well said.
Lies. It's all lies.
It's all lies. Yes. So what's the deal? Why is that such a big deal, like to people that are from that state, that there's such, I mean, it's almost like I think about it in the same vein as Louisville. Like Louisville
Right.
and Louisville are two very different ways to say it. Some, depending on where you're at in the country, people will say it correctly or some people will say it posed up. What do you think the deal
Yeah.
is?
I don't know, but I don't think we can make a lot of sense of the English language in general.
Good
Like
call.
there's that guy on all over social media that just kind of makes fun of how things make no sense.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
were to read things through phonetically, it doesn't help to know vowel sounds or what consonants do. It's none of it makes sense. So I
yeah,
think that at some point, it's kind of like when there's a street that's named after a person, right?
right.
And you're like, oh, this is Couch Street. Well, in Portland, Oregon, it's not pronounced that way. So,
Oh,
like,
geez.
it's the name of the family, right? That it's named after. So, just things like that that make no sense. So, I don't know where Oregon comes from, but it's almost pronounced more like an organ in your body or an
Yeah,
organ you're playing,
yeah.
like an
Well
instrument.
said. Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess for people who aren't from there, they're just like, how do I sound out this word, right?
Yeah, right. Well, look at me. I bumbled my way through it at the beginning. I couldn't even say the two different. Well, I actually said it, I think, it the right way. So
Uh-huh.
you've, in a weird way, since I've known you over the past few years, pre-wired my brain to where I don't even have to say Oregon ever again. I actually sound like an idiot when I say that to myself. So like, I think you've got me dialed in.
Well, good. We've accomplished
Yeah.
something today.
All right. Yeah. All right. Small wins on this podcast. All right. So let's get after it. So being from that part, the Pacific Northwest, and not from Minnesota, paint me a little bit of a picture of what life was like for you growing up and family dynamics and all the things that make you you.
Let's see. The kind of short version is I grew up kind of all around Oregon, so my folks have to my in my memory never been together. So I moved between families growing up, but mostly all around Oregon because my dad was an educator, so he worked at different schools, and my mom worked in banking, and she would kind of move to where her next assignment was because she was moving through kind of management training and all of that. So I would move back and forth, kind of ping pong between parents, and my brother did the same a bit. And a lot of rural communities, because that tends to be what my dad likes more. He gravitates towards the smaller town. My mom would live more in the city. So I had a little bit of both. And
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of that was just trying to figure out how to adapt to new situations an awful lot because I started new schools a lot.
So your parents divorced when you were young, and do you have just one sibling, one brother?
For most of my life, I did growing up. My sister is a lot younger than me. So
Oh,
was born when I was 17.
oh,
So
okay.
my
Yeah.
brother and I are 2.5 years apart, and he's older. My sister came along, and we have a different mom. So same dad,
Hmm.
but that was a surprise. So I didn't live with her. I mean, 1 year in the home together, and then I was off.
Right, right. So then when you guys were spending time with your mom, and so let's think pre-17, pre your sister, when you were you both spend time with your mom, both spend time with your dad, or how did that work? Split time or like how did that all work?
It was a little bit of a mix. I would say by the time I was 5, my brother lived with my dad. I lived with my mom. We had a couple years like that. We came together for 1 year with my mom, then both with my dad, and then we split again. So it was a
Wow.
little bit of a I'll go here, you go there. And then whenever I would really be missing my brother, they would bring us back together because I think I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
longed for that sibling closeness.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I loved living with my mom, but I miss being with my brother, things like that. So by the time I got to high school, though, my brother was kind of done moving back and forth. You know how you get set in your
Yeah.
friendships and sports and things like that. So I wanted to be closer to him. So I stayed put. So we both lived with my dad, and my mom just moved closer to us just to make it work better.
Yeah, I always think
Yeah.
about, we always talk about the nature versus nurture aspect of things. And, one thing I've known about you as I've gotten to know you, through being on the team and stuff like that is your passion for people. And I talked about that at the beginning. I was joking around a little bit as well, all about the people. But at the end of the day, like that's going to be kind of the tone of this podcast and the tone of your journey. Do you think that anything in that of like kind of having a little bit of disconnectedness with not only your brother, who you had a really tight relationship with, but your mom and dad, and just kind of the jockeying around and stuff like that? Do you think that that had any impact on you of how you approach people and just the human element of things?
I think so. And I wouldn't have been able to put words to it at a different point in my life. But if I look back and think through just the idea of having compassion for people's background and circumstances and where they're
Hmm.
coming from, I think you start to pick up on that when you're always in new situations and you're meeting new
Hmm.
people and you're having to read people and situations. I just became more conscious of my surroundings and how to
Hmm.
navigate relationships and dynamics. And that's between parents too, because the
Hmm.
households run really differently. Every school is different.
Hmm.
I was always in that point of rebuilding. So I think that some of that is just kind of, it's built into me
Hmm.
before I could ever put words to it, but it helps me a ton now. I just never
Yeah.
would have realized how much I would use that skill and
Yeah.
that capability as an adult, right?
Would you consider yourself a chameleon? Like you're able to adapt to different situations because of some of those things, or maybe not because of those things, but do you just in general, do you consider yourself a chameleon?
I think I adapt well. I don't know that I necessarily, well, I don't, I would say blending, yes, to a degree.
Hmm.
I adapt well and I blend in, but I find my spot in any new environment. So
Hmm.
I'm not in the background. I usually
Hmm.
find a way to make a mark
Yeah.
or lead or to help or to have a purpose wherever I am.
Yeah. Well said. I love it. I've seen that firsthand as I got to know you. You were only a couple years into being a Minnesotan. So like you were making your mark and you're making your mark on this new state, but we'll get into that in a little bit. What was your air quotes jam? What were you into in high school?
It's so funny to think back now because I'm so different, but I was a cheerleader all through high school and it was so important to me. And then I was also in show choir, which
Hmm.
is like dancing and singing with sequins and all the things, right?
Wow.
Those were my things. So both kind of performance, dance, all of that, which feels really not me today,
Yeah, I was gonna
but
say I
it
feel
was my life.
but I feel, to me that just screams extrovert where I feel like you've got some introversion to you to where that just, maybe it is still inside of you or maybe you do maybe whatever happens inside your house is up to you on, doing show choir in your living room or whatever, but I do feel like there you have to have a little bit of extroversion to do that. Is there now, are we talking about like some kind of shift that happened as you matured around introvert versus extrovert as well?
I think so. So I would say if you talk to anyone who knew me as a little kid, that I would be the one hiding behind my mom, right? Quiet, reserved, kind of waiting to be drawn in. And I even was like that moving from school to school. I was just always kind of pulled into the friend group. I didn't have to
Yeah.
be the initiator because I was the new kid, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that worked. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but I was the new kid that was kind of brought into the fold. That's how I made friends.
Mm.
And then as I got older, I started to, I think, just observe my brother a lot more. And he was much more outgoing. He was a kind of more of a natural leader. And I just started aspiring to be more like that. And so I started saying, well, what could I do? What are the little things I can do? So
Hmm.
I found things like I got involved in music. I played the clarinet initially and got into band and like would practice and I think it was not just about the instrument, but it was about being part of something. So I
Hmm.
think that's like the first baby step. And then I did some sports. I wouldn't say I'm naturally athletically inclined. So I was like, I'll dabble. Okay, that's
Yeah.
not for me.
Yeah.
But being a part of a team was, I think, part of what drew me into cheerleading. It
Mhm.
was not the being in front or the performance of it. It was more of the building something with other people,
Yeah. The
the collaborative
camaraderie.
piece.
Yeah.
Same with student government. I got into that because it was being part of something. And I would say the show choir, it was the same thing. I'm a musician, so I was kind of drawn to the music
Mhm.
side of it. But also in show choir, you do things as a team, you compete, you build a community. And I think I was longing for that piece. Again, not that I could have voiced that in the same
Mhm.
way back then, but that's the draw for me was being a part of something bigger than myself.
Yeah, and I feel like, if you look at people that are actors and musicians and people that let's just say performers, right? And that could be stage performers, that could be whatever. You see them I think we all look at them in a public eye, and that we would assume, well, they got to be extroverted and whatever. But then in some cases, they'll just go, and it's almost like how they blow off steam and how they relax is where they recharge themselves. And some people need to go, extroverts, they say need to go out and like be around other people. They're charged up by other people. Introverts, they just need some downtime. Well, I think like there's a tone for you as you've gone through your career, even now, like do the speaking that you do and getting up in front of people, that I like that is all just screaming performance. But yet at the end of the day, you just recharge a little bit different. And that's kind of probably what makes the introvert extrovert aspect of things just a little bit more identified with you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I think of it as being I'm kind of recharged on my own to some degree, but I'm outgoing. I
Hmm.
still like being a part of a community. I like the connection I get through
Hmm.
public speaking. So it's not really about the being on the stage, but it's about the moment when you can see that you're making connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
That energizes me. And I just happen to need to have that platform to do it. So it's a
Yeah.
means to make connection.
Where'd you go to college? Undergrad.
Undergrad, I went to Western Oregon University, so that's near Salem. It's near the capital of Oregon and in a small rural town. And my brother went there too, so I had some family there, and we ended up with the same degree. We graduated the same year, so I'm a little bit of a follower of him
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah. Yeah. And did he take a different path than you? You've kind of stayed in corporate for a while until you decided to go the entrepreneurship route. Did he get into small
Yeah.
business, or has he stayed in corporate?
He's done some different things. So initially I was in banking all through college. It was just kind of a college job that turned into a career.
Yeah.
He worked at the same bank for a while, and my mom did too. So kind of the family thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
He eventually kind of found his own path. So he's a photographer and he does a lot of education around photography and he nerds out about, I would say, gear in general, all kinds of
Yes. Yeah.
gear, but that's his thing. And but he's been self-employed. He's been in companies. He dabbles in a lot of places, but he's just a creative, I think, at heart
Mm.
and finds places for that to live.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I know about you is you've done more college than the average person, and you are a lifelong learner. I also subscribe to being a lifelong learner. I just think I learn different. I went to college for like 2 months. You went to college for multiple years. Let's break this college journey down because I think you've got degrees and doctorates, and like we could just stamp and double stamp these. So tell me about, so what did you graduate your undergrad with, and then tell me about your college journey after that.
So my undergrad's a Bachelor of Music, which is kind of it's a degree for usually people who want to go on and do composing or teaching or something
Mhm.
else. So, but I focused on voice and composition mostly.
Cool.
And it's not easy to get work doing that right out of college. You kind of have to
Yeah.
figure out like, am I going to go move somewhere where this is a more viable career? And it's a lot of self-promotion and performing. And even as a musician, I am more of a creative collaborator. I love to write and arrange more than I like to perform. I like to be a
Mm.
part of something bigger than myself.
Mhm.
So I quickly figured out I love doing this, but I do not like doing it solo. So that's kind of where I wouldn't say that education didn't go anywhere, but I didn't get any more degrees in that. I kind of went into the workforce, years passed, and then I finally was like, I think I want to learn more about the thing I'm doing now in work. So that's kind of what led me back to get a master's. So I went to University of Denver, and that was while I was working. So I kind of trudged through one class at a time, got that, studied organizational communication, org development. And it was really just because I wanted to learn more about how to influence strategy and people and change and all of that in business. And then I'm just a nerd. And if my company was going to help pay for it, I would keep learning. And so I decided at one point, I was just kind of at a point in my career where I had a job. I could do it, but it wasn't intellectually very challenging. And I was like, I need something to kind of grab onto and to stretch me. So I went back and started my doctorate. So I did that through Grand Canyon in Phoenix, and then moved out to Minneapolis in the middle of that and finished it while I was here.
Finished it online.
Yeah. So, because by that time I was writing a dissertation, which that's all remote anyway.
Yeah.
So I did that, and that was in organizational leadership. So I have a doctor of education. So that's an EDD.
Wow, man, you do have a lot of education. And I was joking. I think I was kind of joking about the doctorate thing that just came out. I don't even know where that came from, but I didn't know that. That's awesome. So you have you literally have a doctorate of education because of that. Wow, that, like, I don't know. For me, I'm just nerding out on that stuff because I can't see myself. Well, one, the way my brain is wired, I just don't do good I don't quote unquote read good. So I have to do everything audibly. And so the effort that you have to put into that, especially how old were you when you went to get your doctorate?
Gosh, how old am I now? I was probably, I don't know, I started it at maybe age 40.
Right. That's,
I would guess.
Like, that's, to me, like, I think there's a very few amount of people that are going to take that leap when they're 40 years old to reinvest into their education. I don't know. I don't need to go down a rabbit hole on that. I just wanted to say, I think it's awesome.
Well, I think it's one of those things you have to think long and hard about, because you can learn a lot of other ways. To your point, I don't know that I would do it again, because when you do something that intense, there's huge trade-offs. Like, I had no life outside of, like, I had family. I was raising 4 kids, married, all that. But that becomes your hobby, right? Writing, research, all of that becomes what you do with your free time. And that's not super energizing or fulfilling at times. Like, you miss the stuff that you've kind of put on hold. So I'm glad I did it. I mean, it's good to have achieved something like that, but it's also, you always have to think about, what am I giving up to do that? Right.
Yeah, I think anything that is going to be a little bit of a monumental task, whether it be building a business or continuing your education or anything along those lines, there is going to be trade-offs, right? And something is going to suffer. And I think that's good that you said that too, is that I think people that are even thinking about doing that, or let's just take it and go into, let's say starting a business, right? You have to make strategic sacrifices, and you made strategic sacrifices, but at the end of the day, like, this is serving you now with the business that you have. And so the effort I'm hoping is worth it, right?
Yeah. I think it took me a while for me to see that, for it to kind of come around and be like, it's worth it. It wasn't like this effort that was wasted. It's definitely useful, but I think that you can get there a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right. Let's take a quick break here. Let's listen to some of our community supporters that help make this thing happen, along with the community and our members. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back here with Summer Miller.
Regardless if you're a startup just figuring things out or a medium-sized organization with a full team, having a legal partner by your side is crucial. Seiler Law is fiercely loyal to their clients and are passionate about removing headaches and roadblocks that can pop up during the growth of your business. Whether you need general outside counsel, are planning a business transaction, or even need someone to guide you through the estate planning process, the team at Seiler Law are the advocates for you. Visit SeilerLaw.com to learn more. Seiler Law, where experience meets pragmatism. The topic of talent is hot in organizations of any size, and I would argue none more than small to mid-sized businesses. That's why it's crucial to have a partner to help you navigate all the HR idiosyncrasies so you can focus on working on your business and not in it. Insperity is a full-service HR partner with a high-touch, high-tech platform helping owners work through challenges like employee retention, company culture, and benefits, just to name a few. Do yourself a favor and explore all they have to offer at Insperity.com. Insperity, HR that makes a difference.
Barton, Walter & Cryer CPAs and Business Advisors is a full-service CPA firm providing premier accounting, tax, and consulting services to a wide variety of middle market and small businesses, primarily throughout the Twin Cities Metro and Upper Midwest. Drawing from diverse and varied experience with large Big Four organizations and boutique accounting firms, our team of CPAs and tax professionals delivers innovative, value-added solutions for our clients throughout personalized attention, diligence, and breadth of knowledge. From day one, we've built long-lasting relationships with our clients based on mutual trust and dedication to growth and long-term financial success. Our approach is client-centered. We make your goals our goals and deliver unparalleled service and support that exceeds expectations every time. Find out more at bwkaccounting.com.
Are you a sales leader looking to take your skills to the next level so you can help your team grow and drive even more revenue? Let's face it, when most sales leaders got promoted from a salesperson to a sales leader, you didn't get much training or tools or best practices. Nobody taught you about how to define strategy or gave you best practices around hiring and training. Nobody told you the best ways to coach and really develop people, or driving accountability or performance management or forecasting. I can go on and on. If you want to learn best practices in these areas and more, and you want to learn from experts and your peers so you can grow, go to www.pivataladvisors.com and specifically check out our sales leader community called the Pivotal Peak Alliance. We would love to talk to you.
When you think of a typical CPA firm, you probably think of tax planning. Well, that just scratches the surface of what Boulay offers their clients. By providing smart, in-depth thinking from experts in accounting, audit, tax, and business consulting, they know what it takes to achieve financial success. Whether it's protecting your business, building your wealth, or securing your future, you can count on Boulay to go beyond addressing just financial matters and providing you with tailor-made, workable solutions. Learn about all they have to offer at bouleygroup.com. Boulay, helping you get there. Security Bank and Trust has been a community supporter and the banking partner of Coalition9 since our inception. One of my favorite things about partnering with Security Bank and Trust is that I have a significant relationship at multiple levels within the bank. From grabbing lunch and building a personal friendship with the president, Andy, to welcoming multiple employees as C9 members, to seeing Andy's smiling face when I swing by the Eden Prairie branch, they get relationships and the banking needs of a business like ours. Check them out at security-banks.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Security Bank and Trust, growing together.
All right, we're back with Summer Miller. Summer, we're going to double back here because we just got into the education thing, and you have an unconventional education journey where you didn't go and just go get your undergrad, get your master's, and then start working. You did it. You trickled it in here after you got your undergrad. So we do need to double back. So what was your quote unquote first real job? Your big person job?
It was actually U.S. Bank. I started working for the bank like a week after I finished high school. And I would say I kind of stayed in banking even after college. So it was kind of the college job. I did some other stuff. Sometimes I had 2 or 3 jobs like a lot of people do when you're kind of trying to pay through college. But I stayed in banking and just kind of tried different things along the way. But I was a teller part-time. I would float between branches and cover people's vacations, stuff like that.
What is it about? So you spent a healthy amount until you started your business, you were pretty much in banking the whole time. Is it just, is that environment? And then the banks that you work with were a couple of the bigs, and that environment, I'm sure, just needed a little bit of focus on the human element of things because of just the financial. I feel like this me being an outsider completely to A, corporate, and B, banking is, I feel like financial services can be so insular, and people that focus on the financial services segment, they tend to be a little bit on the introverted side, and they sometimes tend to be very intellectual. And bringing those people together, I think, takes a certain kind of gift. When did you realize that you needed to take the efforts of which you were focused on and kind of saw the blind spots in where the banking area was and you can influence your talents?
I think for me, it started when I was early in banking. I was on more of the revenue side. So in the branch anyone would walk into, right? And you're focused more on service and sales. And I was in a position where I was responsible for helping people achieve sales goals and coaching and developing. I'm not really a competitive person myself. And so I got more interested in what motivates people, what helps people to want to do these things that are sometimes hard, what makes it worth it. And so I think I just naturally started to think about development of people How do we motivate? How do we develop? How do we make this something they want to be part of? And then I got the chance to do a 9-month project. At the time, I was at Bank of America, and they had a 9-month project where we were helping prepare people for a big change. And I got to step out of my day job and take on this other role. And it gave me pretty much a full-time focus on change, transformation, coaching, development. And I was like, gosh, could I just do this all the time? Is there a place in this company where I could help to influence how people move through change well and how they learn and grow? So that kind of led me into learning and development, but that wasn't a plan ahead of that. It was just I had a taste of it and I was like, I want more of this.
Cool. And so how long did you stay at Bank of America?
I was there for 4 years. I had been at US Bank 3 years prior. So I did kind of a US Bank, B of A, back to US Bank, but lots of years between the two of them.
Yeah. Big banks, right? I think I'm going to put Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and US Bank in kind of the same bucket. You could probably throw BMO in there and all that other stuff. Do they have relatively the same culture within that or within their organizations? Or did you see a stark difference in the cultures between Bank of America and US Bank, especially when you went back to US Bank?
It kind of depends. So when I started at US Bank, they were much smaller. So that started feeling more like a community bank, more regional, more community. And then through acquisition, it became much bigger. So now I would say they're probably much more comparable than they were when I started. But I think that there was maybe more polish around certain things at Bank of America, but it's a lot bigger and it feels a lot more corporate, right? So there were great things at the time around culture and values and that kind of stuff, but it felt like it took a lot to get anything done, which happens in a lot of big companies. I think that it depends on where you sit. Your perspective is different if you're more junior in your career and aren't a decision maker and you're not an influencer. And when I was at that company at B of A, I was not, at a very high level in the company. I was leading people, but I was still, relatively early in my leadership career. Once I got to US Bank, moving through different roles, I had a lot more influence. And so then you kind of focus on what can I control and influence? How can I create a great culture from where I sit? And sometimes you're doing that against the grain a bit because the company, it might be hard to do the people-centered things that are important. So you think, how can I do that for my team? How do I create the best conditions possible from where I sit and what I can put my fingerprints on?
So you spent almost one of the largest tenures that you had at US Bank in a role was around learning and development. And what size of teams were you working with under the learning and development umbrella?
I supported a lot of different teams. So at times I supported a whole kind of a part of the business like wealth management. I supported retail banking, which would be the branches. So I would lead teams of trainers, designers, strategists that would work with different departments in the company. And we would work on thinking through their learning strategy. What do they need to be doing to get where they're trying to go? How do we build in the right solutions and so forth? So a lot of it is consultative, but then you have teams that are building the solutions. And sometimes that happened within my team. Sometimes we would have specialists in the company that would help us with different projects. But it's a big mix. And I think when you're in a company like a bank, it's almost like having companies within a company. So I've worked with digital and tech and sales and on, right? There's all these specialty areas. So your team has to figure out how to support those needs regardless of the function of the business.
Do you think that your time at US, I'm going to kind of just give a broad overview. A lot of the time that you spent was either on learning and development or transformation. Am I kind of right in just saying that if I'm going to use just a broad scope? Now, the way you just explained that kind of triggered something in my head is it almost is like it was preparing you for small business. So you were working with divisions and small groups, and which is probably not much different than working with a small business that is working through the same challenges and opportunities. It's just, you can almost use a little bit of the same language. It's just, they're just not under some kind of corporate umbrella. Do you feel like that time there at US Bank, as you started to level up in your career and be ready to eventually exit, prepared you to be the best possible consultant that you can be?
I think it absolutely did, because you have to learn to scale up and down. For example, I might be working with a region of 600 people or a department of 20,000. And you still are doing the same kind of work. You're just having to adapt to what they partly what they can do, what's their budget, what's their capability, what are they trying to drive in the business. Those things are so different depending on what the assignment is or what client you have within the company. So I think it did absolutely help me be ready to be independent and work with different industries. And I can see that, but I think it's harder for other people to see that. So when I first came out and went independent, there were some folks that were concerned that I had such a deep banking background. Like, oh, you've only done one thing. When in fact, I had done a bunch of different stuff with different, almost like different industries when you think about the verticals in a bank.
Yeah.
But it's not as easy to see that on paper, right? You just see a company name.
Yeah, I feel like that's where resumes are, they fall flat, right? Or a LinkedIn profile or something like that. People do a broad brush stroke, they buzz through it and they don't see the details that are there, or even just spending the time getting to know someone. Even just doing this, right? Like we're happen to be recording a podcast, but this is much like an introductory call or a networking call or something like that. Tell me your story, tell me your journey type of a thing. And that's where you can paint a little bit more of a picture of like, okay, this is actually the work that I did that's way deeper than what you can find on my resume or LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think that's true for so many of us, no matter where we've been. If you really peel it back and start talking about what the work actually looked like and what challenges you faced, we have so many things that are transferable. That it's just not easy for people to see unless you dive deep and you get to know people.
So as you're progressing, just the whole, U.S. Bank, Bank of America, U.S. Bank, and then we'll stop right there for now. Are you the type of person that had a plan and like, I'm going to, because you knew kind of the path that you could take in learning and development and transformation, things like that. Were you strategic about it, or were you like almost reactive to what the environment was bringing you and you just capitalized on opportunities?
I would say I sought opportunities out more, but they weren't what people would expect. So I moved from learning and development to leading HR business partners, which is not a traditional path, but it's because I wanted to show that I could manage a different level of risk and complexity, and I could influence the business in a new way. And so for me, that's a strategic move because I wanted to grow and demonstrate capability and within the company in a way that I wouldn't be able to do if I stayed in L&D. But on paper, people are like, well, why would you make that move? Like, why would you want to lead HR business partners?
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up in that kind of job. But it was also the challenge of it. It was they needed to become strategic and consultative, and that was my specialty. I had to learn all the HR stuff, though, because I didn't grow up in that job. And then once I moved, the change and transformation work wasn't really on purpose. I didn't apply for a job. I just started studying it. That's my whole dissertation is about change and communication and all of that. And I started writing about it on LinkedIn. And somebody from my company was reading it. You know how there's the lurkers out there that don't comment. Oh, yeah. They don't like anything, but they're following it.
Yeah.
And then when I said, how come you're asking me to come out to Minneapolis for this role? They're like, well, I've been reading your post on LinkedIn.
Crazy.
And it was just one of those things where I was like, I just felt compelled to put something out there because I was like, I'm learning stuff. I want to teach other people. And it turned into an opportunity.
So literally the you putting yourself out there and probably with some vulnerability and some transparency trickled in, and just some social media exposure is what brought you to Minnesota.
Yeah.
It is
and they relocated my family here, and it was a whole new opportunity that I probably wouldn't have applied for. I wouldn't have been looking for it, but it was perfectly aligned with what I was passionate about and excited about. It was just a way to do it on an enterprise scale for the whole company instead of just the area I supported.
How long were you at US Bank living in Minnesota before you decided to take the leap and start your own thing?
About 3 years. Like I came right before COVID, kind of got through the pandemic, the return to office, which were things I was responsible to help guide being in change and transformation. And then a lot of the, how do we now reset what we're doing as a company in light of all of the changes? So I was doing a lot of org design, a lot of transformation work. So it got me to kind of September of 22 before I left. And I moved here in the summer of 2019.
Wow. So 3 years. Yep. 2022, there had to be a catalyst for you to have to make the leap. What was that? What was the switch that flipped that made you say, all right, I'm going to complete my corporate journey here, and I got to go do my own thing?
I think for a lot of people, it's kind of going through something where you feel like you have nothing left to give. And when your job becomes so all consuming that you come home and you don't have time for your kids or your family, or you don't have what it takes to invest in other things that are important. I'd kind of gotten to that point. I couldn't identify why at first, but I think when I started digging in, I was just pretty misaligned with my personal values because work had become so big in my life. And it kind of sneaks up on you because I'd been at the same company all in. I was there 21 years. It was so much a part of my identity and really tangled up, right? And I just was like, I can't keep growing and doing the things that are important if I don't untangle this. And I can't do that here because I'd gotten to the point in my career where, when you can just, people know you can do all the things. And so you just keep getting things piled on and more assignments and more and more volume, but not the right kind of things for you. And it's nobody's fault. It's just kind of, I'd worked myself into a spot where people knew I could handle big things. Mm-hmm. And it's great to be trusted, but it was way too much for me to carry.
Yeah. So almost going back to that, what we talked about earlier is like something has to give, right? Like you made those sacrifices when you were getting your doctorate, and you're at a point now where it's just like, okay, I think I'm at a stage in my life where I can't make those sacrifices again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it worked out. I was able to find a way to exit with some cushion and go take a little mini sabbatical and figure out who am I without my job. That was kind of the mission. There was no place I was going other than I need to untangle my identity from this job.
So then as you took your sabbatical hiatus and you were probably in reflection mode and thinking about what's next, you started your company. And now, as you look back on that, it now having been 2.5 years or so, I'm thinking, does it look the same as it did when you ideated it, or has it evolved over the last 2.5 years?
It's changed so much. I think when I first met you wasn't too far after I had gone independent, and I was still kind of thinking of myself as an HR strategy person because I had come from an HR department and I was strategic.
Yeah.
And when you start talking to small businesses about strategic HR, they're like, what does that mean? Right. And it's corporate speak a little bit, because in a big company, there is definite like strategic HR people, operational people. There's more distinction. Mm-hmm. And in a smaller business, people do all the things, right? You don't have so much segmentation. And so I learned pretty quickly that I had to change the way I thought about and talked about what I did. And I would say my first year was a lot of test and learn. I was like, well, I can do this long list of stuff because that's just what I've done. So I can dabble in HR consulting. I can do org design. I can do learning and development strategy. So I tried on these things. I did a fractional CHRO role. There's a lot of stuff that happened in that first year where I could just say, what feels good? Mm-hmm. What's my sweet spot? What do I hate? It was a lot of just figuring it out. And I realized kind of at the core, I really loved building capability in people. I'm an educator. That's just part of what lights me up. Mm-hmm. And so if I could lean more into that, I realized I could probably build something more meaningful that made it the kind of impact that was important to me. So that's really what shifted after a year in business. I said, I want to build in this education component. I'm not a fixer. I'm going to help people build capability so that they have the strength for the future.
And is that what SDM looks like right now? Is that what you're focusing on?
Yeah. So now I do mostly people-centered leadership and change advising and education. So I work with executive teams to teach them how to think about people-centered experiences differently. So designing for humans, so people want to grow with you. And it's an idea you have to understand first before you start to integrate it and shape the way you work. So a lot of that is education, but then it's how does this live in our company? Because there's no one size fits all. And it's helping people find a way that it resonates and works for them based on what they're trying to do and what growth stage they're at. So I'm the guide helping to teach it, but also bring it to life. And I would say that that's really changed the way I feel about the work I do. It changes the kind of work I say yes or no to, because I'm not a fixer. So I'm not going to come in and run your change management initiative for you, but I'm going to help you do it well and in a people-centered way. So it's a shift, right? But it's worked really well.
One question I ask people that have started a business from corporate, and if you've listened to the podcast, I've asked this question before, so I'm going to ask you the same thing: is how did you handle going in a role within the corporate environment where you knew what you were getting up for every single day, to then the ambiguity of being a solopreneur and then having to be responsible for not only executing the work that you do for your clients, but finding the clients, managing finance, all of the things that I think that is kind of the forgotten part and the non-sexy part of that. How did all that feel for you?
I think the running the business administratively felt really natural because I'm administrative, and that's just an area where I feel pretty comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Business development, I had like no idea. I was used to everybody coming to me already with like, hey, we need help with X, whatever that is. And I had done sales before in banking. So it's not like I'm a stranger to developing business, but also it's on behalf of a company that has a brand that's known, right?
Yeah.
And then nobody knows what SDM Integrative Consulting is. If
Yeah.
anything, I'm probably still more the brand than my business name, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of an entity because people think I'm a solopreneur, right? They think I want to work with Summer and this is what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So I would say I had to learn a lot about how I wanted to approach it. And it's a lot of it is being true to who you are. I'm a relationship builder. I'm a capability builder. I found that the best way for me to find business and to build early trust was through public speaking. And so I leaned into that. I'm like, if people can see me speak and make a connection, they can tell pretty quickly, am I going to want to work with this person or not? Do I trust her? Can she adapt to what we're facing right now? Can she help us navigate it? The fastest path to that is to have someone see me speak in public. And
Yeah.
you can do a lot of coffee dates and a lot of networking. It takes way too long for what I do. And so I think that some of that is just figuring out through experience.
So then as we look into the future, if I would ask you this 2.5 years ago, that's a very challenging thing to ask when somebody's just starting their business. Now that you've got a few years under your belt, now you've started to build up the rigor. You're building your path. I don't doubt that you even do some of your own strategic planning and things of like how you want to build your business out and how you want to show up every day. What does the future hold for you and for your business over the next few years?
It's still a question I'm like muddling through because I never meant to be a business owner. And I'd say that I still care more about the work and the impact than I do about the business. I do run it like a business, but I'm not trying to build an empire over here, is maybe a way I think about it. I won't have any branded merch, none of that, right? Because I'm more focused on, I want to do things that inspire me and that have an impact on other people that's meaningful. So I still want to do more of that, but I want to find more ways to be collaborative in my business because the hardest part is for me is flying solo because I'm built for being part of a team, which goes all the way back to the why I was in cheerleading, why I was in show choir, like all of that stuff. I want to be a part of something bigger than myself. And so I'm always looking for strategic partnerships, clients who want to be collaborative. And I think it's figuring out what does that look like in my business model? How can I make this more about that? That's, I think, a little bit of a process of trial and error. And I'm experimenting a lot and figuring out how do I do that without building something huge within this brand?
Mm-hmm. And I've seen you do your talks. Do you have multiple topics that you speak on, or do you have one kind of keynote that you lean on?
I would say most often it's navigating change without leaving people behind. That's kind of the standard keynote. But I've done a lot of sessions that are maybe an offshoot of that. Like I just did a session last week and we were focused on navigating resistance and uncertainty. Everything I'm talking about is about being people-centered and designing for humans. But often it's just tackling it from a different angle. It's helping connect what's happening in the brain to what happens in the behavior, right? And if we understand that, we can navigate things and in a way that makes people want to grow with us, be a part of that future instead of have it happen to them.
So I'm sitting here and consuming all of this like our listeners are. And I have one more business question for you before we get into some family stuff, and then we'll do 9 questions. But the path that you've taken, okay, you spend 21 years in corporate. You've now owned your business for 2.5 years. You've got a handful of talks underneath your belt and are being sought after to come and speak on those topics. I got to ask, is there a book in the future?
A lot of people ask that. And I think yes, there will be. Sweet. I think one of the challenges is figuring out how to prioritize that when you're a solopreneur and doing all the business development and all the client work and all the things. And I teach at universities too. So I'm looking at a lot of because I'm a nerd, I'm looking at research to support the writing right now.
Yeah.
I have opinions, but I want to support them. And that's kind of the nerd and the doctor in me, right?
Yeah,
So
I love it. Yeah.
It's early stages, building the groundwork so that I can write something that's grounded in real, true meaning for people.
Good answer. I didn't want you to have to say something that you had a proverbial gun to your head or anything like that. I just wanted you to speak honestly, and I'm glad that you shot me straight on that's a maybe. I'm going to take that as a hard maybe. That's like a 52%. It's a 52% maybe. Okay. All right.
I will do it. And I did take a nonfiction writers workshop this year. So that's a step in the right direction, because I was like, I need to be around other writers. I have to get better at honing this craft, especially because I write like an academic and a business person. And I write much differently than I speak, because it's kind of, when you're in doctoral programs, a lot of the creative is like drilled out of you, right? It's right. Just the facts, and I have to bring that back in. So it's a process.
All right. Well, we'll wait and see. We'll get you back on the podcast when you launch that book, whenever that happens.
That's a plan.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your family.
So my family is big. We'll start there. We're blended. So my husband is Jason, and he's a mental health therapist. He works here locally at Health Partners. And then we have 3 kids that are adults. So Jason had 3 kids when we got married. And one of them is married with 2 daughters. So I'm a grandma. And they all live in Oregon. The big kids do. The adults now, not kids. And then together we have 4 kids at home.
Oof,
and so,
a big family. Holy smokes.
Yeah, 7 kids all together. Yeah. And our kids at home are ages 9 to 16. Yeah, and we are a quirky household. We have one of my daughters and I are maybe neurotypical. And then we have 4 that are neurodivergent. So we have people on the autism spectrum with ADHD. So a big blend of quirkiness and different needs. And I'm learning every day how to navigate all of that. But we have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and a lot of things that don't make sense to other people.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a hot second. A, when you've got a family that big, that's going to always happen. But B, yeah, I think when you're dealing with some of the neurodivergence and things, that's going to, every day is a new flavor, right? Yesterday is not going to look like today. I can promise you that much.
No, we learn all the time, and we laugh a lot.
Yeah. I just want to say kudos to you for balancing all of that. I'm sure that isn't easy, managing a lot of those things, but then also in the emphasis that you put on your career, Jason puts on his career, and just being good leaders and providers for your family. I mean, being able to balance all that, I'm sure. Does sleep is one of those things that maybe doesn't take as much of a priority, or are you a good sleeper?
I'm getting better. I'm a night owl. Okay. And I think that happened when I was writing my dissertation. I just got really conditioned to staying up late because I was trying to write when everyone else was sleeping. I'm getting better. I put an app on my phone to help me calm down, and
there you go.
It's getting better, but I need more sleep than I get, for sure.
All right. We'll leave it at that. I think that's pretty much anybody that listens to this podcast probably doesn't get enough sleep. So, all right, let's take a quick break here. We're going to come back with 9 questions, because even though we told your journey, there's some things that I can ask you in 9 questions that we probably wouldn't get to during a normal podcast that is going to help shape you and who you are. And so I want to be able to give you the opportunity to share some of those things. So let's take a quick break, listen to a few more of our community supporters, and we'll be right back here with Summer.
Tradition Capital Bank is a local bank that has the products and capabilities to service middle-market companies, nonprofits, and their owners, employees, and families by offering a high-touch approach paired with customizable solutions. Think of them as your nimble ally, serving with generosity, care, and precision. Tradition starts with the assumption that there's always more to learn, try, and discover, aiming to find the best yes for whomever they have the privilege of working beside. From a foundation of trust, Tradition takes disciplined, smart risks to help people grow beyond what they even thought possible. Tradition Capital Bank is the second largest privately owned bank headquartered in the Twin Cities, and with locations in Edina, Wayzata, and North Oaks, Minnesota, alongside their office in Scottsdale, Arizona, Tradition Capital Bank is committed to big bank offerings with a small bank ethos. Let their team be the friend you need in your next financial move.
Looking for an insurance partner who is as invested in your success as you are? Christensen Group is Minnesota's largest employee-owned independent insurance agency. Since 1952, we've been connecting businesses and individuals with tailored expertise and solutions to manage risk and protect what matters most. Ready to get ahead of your risk? Call Christensen Group today at 952-653-1000. Christensen Group Insurance, because better tomorrows start with thoughtful todays. Leading a growing organization means knowing when to bring in strategic expertise. At All-in-One Accounting, we understand that your financial needs evolve as you scale. We're more than just accountants. We're trusted partners who align our expertise with your vision, driving sustainable growth through expert financial leadership. From day-to-day bookkeeping to high-level strategy, we help you grow profitably, protect your assets, and amplify your impact. Consider us your partner for both immediate financial clarity and long-term strategic success. Connect with us at allinoneaccounting.com.
Kaisa Wealth Management treats each client like a member of the family. Acting as your personal CFO, we are fiercely devoted to your financial prosperity. At Kaisa, our wealth strategies are aligned with your core values, creating a wealth plan centered around legacies you wish to create. This is our Kaisa commitment. Our wealth strategies are dynamic and tailor-made for your long-term goals because as a fee-only investment firm, excellence in service is not just a promise, it's our baseline. Whether it's selling a business, planning succession, creating a legacy, navigating life challenges like death or divorce, supporting executives on the move, planning retirement, or preserving family wealth, we are here for you. Find out how we can help to simplify your wealth at kaisawealth.com. United Healthcare is dedicated to helping people live healthier lives and making the health system work better for everyone by simplifying the healthcare experience, meeting consumer health and wellness needs, and sustaining trusted relationships with care providers. UHC is continually focused on building a modern, high-performing health system via improved access, affordability, outcomes, and experiences. With a network of over 1.6 million physicians and healthcare professionals and over 6,000 hospitals, United Healthcare is dedicated to connecting employers and their employees to better health by offering quality benefits designed for affordability. For more information, visit United Healthcare at www.uhc.com. United Healthcare, helping people live healthier lives.
This podcast is supported in part by the Unscripted with Verseek podcast, formerly People Make It Possible. Join Kathy Robidoux and Chris Dardis as they sit down with top Minnesota business leaders to explore their paths to success. Gain insights, inspiration, and real leadership stories. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
In addition to our amazing prospering and thriving level supporters, we want to shine a spotlight on our equally awesome evolving level supporters. Alliant, Bauer Design Build, Beyond Design, Cox Insurance, EOS, specifically Justin Cox, Tom Holleran, and Mike Jones, Madera Partners, Modern Foundation, and Sales Homie. All of the Coalition9 community supporters can be found on our website at coalition9.com/community-supporters, or you can find the tab at the top. All right, we're back with Summer. Summer, 9 questions. Can you confirm to me that you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I have no idea.
Yeah, good. All right, let's do this thing. What are 3 words that describe you?
I would say organized, driven, and compassionate.
Well done. Not much dead air in there when people aren't going to feel that. But I said we can do all the editing. We didn't have to on that one, so you had that one locked and loaded. Good job. What is your all right? You're a night owl, so this could be at any time in the morning. So anytime before 11:59. What is your morning routine?
It's different every day, but most often I'm getting up. I'm trying to get. This is the school year. I mean, because it's the more chaotic. The school year, I'm trying to get the first kid dressed and ready. I'm packing the lunches, and I'm trying to get myself ready at the same time. And I get one kid off on the first bus, which is like at 6:50, and then I have another kid that goes on a bus at like 8:55. And then the teenagers do online high school, so we're trying to get them out of bed and remind them you still have to go to school. And I'm also on LinkedIn commenting and posting and engaging in between all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to have my first and second cup of coffee. So it's a jumbled mess. But then by the time we hit like 9 o'clock, I'm golden, right? Everybody's doing their thing. and I'm at my desk or I'm off to my client meeting or whatever.
And what time? I know the question was a morning question, but I'm just going to ask this as a follow-up. When does the chaos ensue again in the afternoon?
Usually around 4 p.m. because then people start getting off the bus. And I have this sign on my door and it's like, mom is on a call or mom's on video. It's don't come in, right? Don't come in the office.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
About 4 p.m.
All right. What do you enjoy spending money on?
I love to go out for coffee, but not just like at a chain coffee place. I love to find local roasters where I can buy the good stuff. That's one of my favorite things, but not by myself. I love to meet a person. So, and just have good conversations over great coffee.
Yeah. Is there a locally owned coffee shop that isn't one of the bigs that is your go-to?
I've been going to Annabelle House in Osseo recently. I like that one a lot.
That. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Plug for Annabelle House. What is your most used emoji?
Most use has got to be the hands raised.
Yeah. Like that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. People that all right, I'm not going to try and explain it. People that are listening, if you're listening, you want to know what it is, go to YouTube. What is a guilty pleasure that you choose to indulge in?
I watch Hallmark movies.
Like all the time? During the holidays?
Like when I need to not think because they're so predictable. And sometimes you just need a little certainty in your life. You just need to not have to wonder how things are going to turn out. And you know how it's going to turn out. They're going to go through the stuff and it's all lovely. And then there's conflict. And it's because nobody's talking to anyone and that they resolve it and everybody's happy. And my husband and kids will be like, you're watching this again. I'm like, I just need something that like is predictable right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's not the best made. They make them in like 2 weeks, right? We know,
you know that.
it's it's not like fine art here, but
yeah.
I sometimes just need to rest my brain and that helps me do it.
Yeah, I like it. Good. Well, at least I'm glad you're honest, man. We haven't gotten the Hallmark Hallmark movie answer ever. So chalk that one up for you. If you could bring back one fashion trend, what would it be?
I don't know if it's a fashion trend. Can I give you just a different type of thing? I'm an 80s kid, so I want trapper keepers.
Oh, that's a fashion trend.
Is it? Okay. Well, I want to use those for business. Can we have trapper keepers so that I can pick out my favorite and everyone else picks out their favorite? I like that.
You know, I just feel like it's a generational thing of like trying to pull us Gen Xers into I'm like a cusper, right? So I'm like millennial Gen. I probably identify as a millennial, but my age is a Gen Xer. Anyway, that I go on these things on Twitter or X or whatever, and they're just catering to you through their algorithm of like all these retro things. And I've been seeing more and more like trapper keepers. Obviously, they're targeting me as being a male for G.I. Joe and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, I would be all over that idea around trapper keepers. To me, that is where it's at. Like you can integrate in a little iPad sleeve and that kind of stuff. All right. I love your ideas.
That's a business for someone. Someone needs to do that. Bring it back.
Yep. Bring it back. Just Summer and I each want a complimentary one for the idea. That's it.
That's right.
No royalties. What was your first concert?
The first one I remember, I probably have been to others, but Hall & Oates. Oh. My mom was a huge Hall & Oates fan. So we went to a concert, I think, in Portland and at the Memorial Coliseum.
So my eighth question is going to be, it's not on my list, but have you seen the show Portlandia? And is Portlandia as much like Portland as someone who has never been there thinks it is?
I've seen it, yes. And it's an exaggerated version, but that stuff is rooted in something real.
Yep.
So if you've ever seen it, like I've even had team members that when we were going to pick a place to eat as a team, we had to find a place where things were grown in certain ways, grass-fed beef, like I had team members that were really particular about the restaurants we chose and where the food came from. That's normal in Portland. Totally normal.
Yeah.
Where is it sourced? Like, how do we know? Like all of that stuff. So
being from being from Oregon and knowing that, you probably, I didn't get a vibe that you spent a lot of time in Portland, but is it enough that show pisses you off? Or is it like, it kind of pisses me off, but they're so on point?
It's No, I think I love the show. It was so funny for my husband and I. So he's born and raised in Portland and the burbs of Portland. We met there. We lived there probably like while we were raising our first two kids, and his kids live there now, the older ones. Yeah. So there's so much in that show that is just so funny.
Yeah.
Because we've seen parts of all of it. So it's exaggerated, but it's all based in something true, right?
And if anybody is like, for me, Portlandia is my go-to when I am like, I'm like, can't find anything to watch at like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I need to start to go to bed. Portlandia on IFC. It's a marathon every single night. It's a great show. Anyway, we can go down that rabbit hole. All right. 9th question. And let's wrap this thing up. I made this one specifically for you. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of singer-songwriters?
This is a hard one. I really like, it's not just the writing of the song, but overall, I like someone named Andrew Peterson.
Okay.
And he's not super well known. I just love, it's not just the songs, but it's the arrangements. Because I'm a musician, I care about like all of the texture and stuff. Yeah. So I love him. I love Nickel Creek. And they are like bluegrass, right?
Yep.
I like Ben Rector a lot.
Yep.
And who else? I mean, I have to throw in something jazz related, but it's so hard to choose.
I know that's a hard question to ask on 9 questions too, but I couldn't pass on it knowing that you're a performer.
Thelonious Monk.
All right. I've heard that name. I've heard of 3 of those 4. Nickel Creek, awesome. I listen to all the time. I'm a bluegrass fan. So that's a great one. Nice. Good call on that. Well, I got to tell you, Summer, you have been such a gift to our C9 community. You're a gift to the Twin Cities community, bringing your talents here. Those people that I know that have met you that are like, man, how did you get Summer Miller to be a facilitator for your team? I feel that. And so I want more people to know who you are. I want more people to feel that in real time, in real life, not just over some podcast or over video. So knowing that you like a good coffee every once in a while, I'm sure people would love to get to know you and build some new relationships. How can people get a hold of you and find you?
The easiest way is on LinkedIn. So if you look up Summer Miller, EDD, that's me. I'm the only one. My website is sdmintegrativeconsulting.com. It's a mouthful. It's a lot to type. So LinkedIn's probably easier.
Yeah. I love it. Google. Use the Google machine, right? Google Summer Miller SDM. Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, you're a fantastic addition to this community over the past few years. Your group raves about you, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to share your story here. So thanks so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Aaron.
All right. Well, on behalf of Summer, this has been the Power of 9 podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.
You've been listening to the Power of 9 podcast, hosted by Coalition9 founder and CVO, Aaron Eggert. This podcast is produced by Aaron Eggert and Brenda Harview, with editing by Brenda Harview. Our opening and closing graphic was created by Bethany Price, with video graphic animation by Jensen Studios. Special thanks to Coalition9's valued members and community supporters who help make this podcast possible. Connect with our supporters through coalition9.com/community-supporters. Thank you for tuning in to the Power of 9 podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review and subscribe on your favorite platform. This is the podcast of Coalition9, a community of entrepreneurs and leaders changing business 9 leaders at a time. Learn more at coalition9.com. That's coalition and the number 9.com.